Good morning once again. Pretty sure it's the 20th of April at 5:54 East Coast time. Sadly, I got to do 3 hours from it, so it's a little before 3 o'clock. I woke up, had some dreams that were rather vivid, was running a river in a boat, waiting for my turn for the river to clear up so I could make a run up the mountain, up the river at speed. And the next thing I know, the president of my Porsche Club, Alaska region, shows up with his car with a funny set of wheels, funny set of tires on it. They're like metal oval grates punctuated with little holes through it, like a grater. I mean, it's like a cooking utensil. And I asked him, kind of a teasing fashion, what the hell is that? You know, I mean, it's not running on tires. He's running on like a metal apparatus with little spikes in there to grab a hold of the racetrack surface. Now, I thought it was on a big car in my dream, but it could have been on a little one. I don't really know. All I know is that the dog woke me up about then. She was very affectionate. She's really sweet. And I think she can tell in my dreams when I got a little stressing going on. And she reaches out to me to lap on me. And she's very sweet. That's all there is to it. And of course, she wakes me up with that stuff. And I don't want to be woken up. I want to roll over, go back to sleep. And I had some profound thoughts. Yes, they seemed profound at the time, enough so that I want to get out of bed and rattle them off to you. And I had some memories of playing when I was younger. I will call it that. And I had one memory that is, I can't share it with you. It's a little too embarrassing. But I look back at the time with a fondness. I hadn't thought about that stuff in decades. So yes, I'm at a senior age in which I reflect upon my life, and I think about those quaint moments that I haven't thought about in a long time. And I get to laugh at those and chuckle at those. Those are lighthearted moments, lighthearted memories. And I also watched another video in bed before going to sleep of a doomsday cult is what they call it. And they meet the definitions of a cult. They've got a ringleader. He seems to be exploiting his followers and for attention as much as he can. He charges a huge amount for his books and for his knowledge. And he's setting up quite a little following. And he's retreating to the mountains. And it bothers me when I see such a character, because I remember the stories about Jim Jones going down to where in Central America or South America and talking people into drinking the Kool-Aid, if not at least forcing others to drink the Kool-Aid. I think it was a mass suicide of over 900 people. There was even a congressman involved who went down there to, I think it was Panama. Seemed to be a jungle, undeveloped, remote region. Talk about isolated and difficult to get to. And this congressman went down about a week before the mass suicides, before the big event. The same time, there were other suicide cults, doomsday cults. There was another group in California, in Los Angeles, I think, and they had a belief that the mothership was coming to take them. And so in order to gain passage or something, they had to poison themselves and their children. Wow. It's bad enough when a person's off their rocker and they take their own life. But when they take the lives of their children, wow. And that has happened far more often than what I want to even dwell on. It's one of those things we don't like thinking about. My house was in a neighborhood, and towards the end of my stay in the house, I was losing it. It was 2008. I went to a local bar for lunch. I heard the lunch food was good. And I heard a story that there was a fellow in the neighborhood who had, I guess, killed his entire family, his wife and his children. And the first responders, the people that showed up, I think the police, the ambulance people, fire people, they had a real rough time with it. I think that's one of the biggest problems with being a police officer is that they see things and get stressed, and the rest of us remain unaware of it. You know, you're not aware of what an officer that you're dealing with has just come off. It could have been he had a nap. It could have been something as simple as that, or his job was so boring that he's ready to fall asleep. Or he could have come off a really bizarre murder-suicide thing where a man goes off the deep end and kills his wife and his children and himself. That's what happened there in Chandler, Arizona. I was working as a psychologist then. It was a very, very tough thing. You know, as a psychologist, people turn to you for explanations. You're supposed to know stuff and understand stuff. And above all, you better have the audacity to give an answer, at least pretend that you think you know what you're talking about. Anyway. On the video, I saw the map of the Earth of a rising sea level and where the safe places were going to be. And this is giving psychology away. But one channel subject matter kind of bleeds over to the other one. And when I saw this map that this fellow had generated, and I guess he had manipulated it a few times, this computer map, when it came to looking at Europe, he admitted that he had to change the data because it was too depressing. Apparently, there's no safe place in Europe. And the difficulty is that if you read the Bible and you read what Yeshua, the Messiah, who you like to call Jesus Christ, because this is giving psychology away. This is not the Bible study channel. I'm not expecting you to know Bible material. I'm not expecting you to be Bible literate here. But if you read what he says, when you see this trouble approaching, head for the mountains. Don't even take the time to grab a cloak. Don't go back into the house. You don't have time. Head for the mountains. Of course, I sit there saying, how could this possibly be true? And I already know the answer to that for you right now. And I'm going to share it with you, and you're not going to like it, most likely. And it is not a pleasant thought. But we do have some symbolism in the Bible. The Bible should be read and then taken literally. And then you can go to other levels, to the symbolism and the analogies. For instance, when we talk about the devil in Hades, in the pit, it turns out that it's not under our feet in the center of the earth. It's up over our heads in that sun. That sun, we've been calling it micronovas, maybe to tame it down a bit. It novas on a regular basis, just like a lot of other stars do out there that we finally can see and watch. Some of them nova very, very often, and others lay dormant for quite a while, sleeping, and then finally come to life in this violent, explosive Our sun's period is 12,068 years. We are due for it. And of course, you'll say, well, that couldn't possibly be true. We'd hear about it on television. We'd hear about it on the news. They couldn't hide that one. Oh yes, they've done a very good job of hiding it. In the last Earth Age, the survivors came out of Polynesia, near as I can tell. They came out of Polynesia on ships and ended up in the Middle East. They were the Phoenicians, and the Phoenicians gave us the Phoenician alphabet, and the Hebrews merely borrowed it. The Hebrews were not a bad people. The Phoenicians were a bad people. They were seafaring. They had their maritime law, their admiralty law, I suspect, from the previous Earth Age. They left Polynesia and arrived in the Middle East. There's no telling how many survivors there were. Likewise, there's no telling how many survivors are going to be in this next event. It saddens me, and I'm thinking maybe it's just fantasy, maybe it's just a nightmare, some sort of ugly thinking that we have going on. But in Europe, there's only a few peaks that there's any hope of surviving on. The problem is that right after this event occurs, we have an ice age. And you don't want to be up on the peaks of the mountains where you survived the floods, the tidal waves, the tsunamis, the ocean sloshing across a drunken earth as it's going through its natural orbit. Or who knows, maybe the orbit's interrupted, maybe it actually goes in another direction, or maybe the earth turns so that the sun rises in the west instead. You may think that's a wild thought. Well, according to the ancient ones, there was a wicked, evil people that turned the earth in the wrong direction. And according to some of the native thoughts, the cultures that have survived today, the indigenous people who have told their stories from generation to generation, the Hopi is what I'm thinking of in particular, the Earth's rotation will be changed back to its normal status. Interesting idea. Don't ask me which way's normal. Don't ask me that. I don't know if they know it. These are just stories that have survived, been passed along from generation to generation. And so those who manage to get to the mountain peaks, stay above the flood waters, above the tidal waves, then have to deal with the fact that the earth is going to go very cold. It's going to be very cold. There probably won't be much sunlight reaching the earth due to the volcanic activity. The earth will probably be hit with a giant dust ball as it blows off the surface of the sun. So we will have that coating everything. The electrical field will generate so much energy on the planet that might just start one big massive fire. So we have carbon from that coating everything. So we have soot to deal with. We have lack of sunlight, lack of heat, lack of warmth, the inability to grow crops for a while. What we do know is that our Russian brothers, and that's what I'm going to call them because that's what they are, and I know they're a little backwards, it seems, from us, but yet if you look at their scientists and their thoughts, their philosophers, they're deeper thinkers. They have better, more holistic approaches than what we have. Just to give you an example, Alexander Luria, the neuropsychologist, he came up with unified theories, if you will, with global theories of development, language development, how thinking develops. He came up with those. And over here in the States, we have a fellow who was a neuropsychologist who developed itty bitty tests for different skills and different regions of the brain. So he took it kind of piecemeal, whereas his Russian counterpart came up with really useful conceptions. Likewise, our physicist over here, as far as I can tell, never developed really good, comprehensive understanding of the geology, understanding of the Earth and its cycles, especially the ice ages. We didn't come up with it at all. Russian physicists, on the other hand, did. And there were two great ones. And the one studied primarily the beginning, the onset of an ice age. And the proper word is nova. Douglas Vogt. I think I'm saying that right. Douglas Vogt. I don't know. Voght. He says that it's a misnomer. And I understand the purpose of saying micronova. It softens it. Oh, that's just having a little bitty nova, not a big nova. Well, it novas. It's a full-blown nova. It blows the hell out of everything. Primarily what it's doing is blowing the dust out of its atmosphere that's irritating it, and it's resetting its own internal energies. And corresponding at the same time, the Earth is resetting its internal energies right as we speak. And this will be accelerating in the next few years. You got 23 years. 23 and a half max. Now, lots going to happen between now and then. I know this isn't the Bible study channel, but I do think Yeshua the Messiah, real good chance he returns. I think we need him to return to get us through this period where the earth gives birth to a new age, where there's sheer, utter destruction on the surface, where not many humans survive, where civilization in all of its magnificence and glory is reduced to rubble, and we lose our technology, and we are basically blasted back into the Stone Age. And we do get to literally reinvent the wheel. Yes. We have to learn agriculture again, and we are going to see that we will lose species. Species will go extinct. You can't stop it. I can't stop it. So stop thinking so highly of yourself that, oh, we can control that. We can do something about that. You dumbasses got such big egos, you think you can control all kinds of things that you can't control. And that's why things get out of control, because you think that you can legislate everything away. Well, you sure as hell can't legislate this away now, can you? And we're going to see a marvelous thing, by the way. The word is speciation. I kind of like it. It's a pretty fancy word. You don't hear it used very much. New species appear. I understand extinction. You blow them to kingdom come and they disappear. You kill them. They're extinct. You change the Earth's atmosphere, some of the dynamics of the weather, maybe the ratio of oxygen, nitrogen, all that stuff. It doesn't support large dinosaurs, large bodies anymore. Not enough oxygen, not enough pressure to get it into the body to support a big, massive body. Can you imagine the heart rate on one of those dinosaurs? How slow it had to be, and how long it took for that blood to course through its veins? Wow. It might have been minutes for one beat. I don't know. Certainly it was slower heartbeat than ours. Maybe we get to witness the Elohim returning to populate the world, to terraform the earth, to regenerate it, organize it, rebuild it. Maybe we get to witness speciation, new species appearing. Maybe we get to watch them actually delivering those creatures here. Or, I don't know, do you think they invent them? Do you think they start with test tubes and go to something bigger? We don't know. It's the proper answer. We don't know. I don't know. Maybe you do. If you do, leave it in the comments. Boy, that's really going to be quite a comment. Not many people are going to make it through this age, this transition to the next age. None of our electronics will make it. There might be something hidden somewhere. I think that that's what has been planned. But as far as the rediscovery and access to those things, it will be months before the snow and the ice subsides and people get access to those deep underground military bases again. There may be some survivors down there. They may have enough food and be able to tolerate it. We don't know how long that period lasts. It looks like at the most it lasts 9 months. And then, according to another Russian physicist who focused upon how we come out of an ice age, what ends an ice age, the sun ends it. A solar flare comes out. That little flame comes out, licks the earth, and starts the ice melting. Boy, that's got to be a magnificent time when the earth has been purified and it comes back to life. Kind of scares me though. What really concerns me is we've created so many chemicals. We have created storage of so many things that would be absolutely disastrous if they were free floating on the surface of the earth, that we don't know how long it's going to take to recover from this one, because we're going to have to deal with all the chemistry, all of the stuff that we created that's going to be let loose, no longer contained in nice clean fuel tanks stored safely, because that stuff's all going to be torn up. All of those pipelines across the Mississippi River, imagine if those rupture and all of those substances, the petroleum in particular, goes into the river. What happens to all those gases as they get emitted into the atmosphere? What happens to us as we get exposed to these things if we walk into a danger zone not realizing that it'll kill us on contact or when breathing it? We just don't know these things, and I don't want to paint a dark picture of it. But the fact is that we are not united. The fact is that we can't even talk about this stuff, and our universities can't talk about it. We can't get access to the old books from the last Earth Age. Those are all sequestered off by the Vatican in their library. 8 miles of corridors under the earth. There must be some incredible books from previous ages. Some incredible forms. I heard of one small species of humanoid that lived apparently way up high in the Himalayan mountains. And we're talking a small being, like 12, 14 inches tall, and they supposedly had a cobalt disc, computer disc, upon which they kept their records. I don't know if it's true or not, but I would imagine whoever has access to those old records has been holding it to themselves, keeping that power to themselves. And all you people clamor for an education, how important it is, but it's no education. It's keeping you dumb. and in the dark, turning us all into mushrooms. We don't understand much of anything. Yeah, they control us. They control the universities. You call that an education? They do their best to obscure knowledge in all disciplines. How many attorneys know what has happened over time with admiralty law, with the law of the seas, with the jurisdictions that have been forced on the American people, how we got there? Not very many. Kind of hard to blame the attorneys as a whole for being so ignorant of the law, but that's what goes on. And look at the medical doctors. They're still trying to push bullshit off on me. And I tell them, go read the literature yourself, damn it. Go look at that stuff. Don't bother me with this shit anymore. I'm not taking the poisons. I'm taking enough of them already. And of course, look at this last event. And we still give them credence. We still make them top dog. We still give them those huge salaries and those licenses to kill, to practice the art of poisoning their fellow men. And then look at psychologists. We aren't allowed access to half of the stuff. We aren't allowed to know about the wickedness. We certainly can't tell you about it, and we can't help you through dealing with it either, because we're taught to deride it. That's poppycock. That's a false memory. That's something they conjured up. Nobody's that evil. They would never do anything like that. Truly, we're living in an age of grand deception. Hopefully it's coming to an end. Isn't it amazing that humanity has gotten to this point? Let's look at the Ukraine right now. Which liars and thieves are the better liars and thieves, theirs or ours? Look at the man in the Oval Office. He is the champion of shakedown artists. You should be very, very proud of him. He's even gotten away with being a pedophile and walking freely, and he reveals it all the time as his mind deteriorates. It's one thing these bad guys have to look forward to, is they can't contain themselves towards the end, so they do tell us things. It bleeds out quite often. My God, I think about the imagery that jackass in Washington, D.C. says, and sometimes I can't help but think that maybe he's casting spells on the rest of us by giving us these details so that we might dwell on them a little too much, and he might throw us under a horrible spell, if you will, under a horrible demonology, if you will, when he describes how the kids played with the hairs on his legs in the water and how they smooth the hair down and it pops back out. God, it's creepy. And the Democrats think it's okay that he's president. They're going to ignore that, and they insist the rest of us ignore that too. Then whose hair is he smelling? And what little girl, big girl, even little girls, is he feeling up? He does that in public on video. We've got tape of it. Poor little girl steps away from him. And there her parents are, sacrificing their child to this monster of a man, this beast of a man. This guy who's not very human. I don't like Trump that much. But you sure know what you had once you don't have it anymore. And we are missing him pretty badly right now. But you folks want to treat him as a Messiah, as a Savior. You're expecting things from him that he can't even deliver. He couldn't possibly deliver. And of course, him being the consummate salesman and deal maker, he's going to let you carry on in that fallacy. And then all of these guys that are in prominence today will tell you they're America first. What does that mean? Destroy America first? Take down America first? Conquer America first? Then we have the rest of the world to ourselves? And what about these people who surround themselves with one particular people and sign off legislation empowering the super minority to con and cajole and guilt the rest of us? So we can't talk about Earth cycles. We can't talk about profound psychological constructs because they might reveal too much. We can't talk about the experiments that were done in the 50s, learned helplessness, and experiments about obedience to authority because they reveal too much. Of whose nature? We can't talk about climate change because all scientists agree. We can't talk about the Holocaust because everybody knows it's a fact. Even the Bushes mock the Jews and the rabbis, saying, couldn't you change it to something more believable? 6 million? Couldn't you have made it like 1.5 million or 1 million or something that was, that was believable? You studied the number 6 million and you realize that they actually started bringing that number forward about the time of our Civil War. And then World War I, they claimed that 6 million were killed. Then World War II, they finally won. They won that war. And they dictated to the reality to the rest of us and have turned us hostage, holding us guilty because of what happened to them. Did it really happen? What about the other massive killings? You realize about 450 million people have been killed in genocides, wars over the last 3,000 years? Do you realize who's been behind that? Who has actually pushed other peoples into doing that so that it looks like this other group of people have done all this stuff? And maybe in some cases they actually did that stuff. I'm no historian, but I went to school with a historian. And the guy was part Mongolian, I think. He was quite a mix. He was a thick-chested guy. He was pretty powerful. And the crazy thing about it was he was soft-spoken. I mean, he was really a nice guy. But he had a presence about him, and he had a powerful body. And he took great pride, I think, in his roots. And what was the one fact he'd like to banner around at Gonzaga University? The biggest massacre in history. 12 million women and children in Baghdad. It was more than a week of round-the-clock, non-stop slaughtering, beheading. They piled the heads up in giant pyramids outside of the city. And he was very proud that it was his lineage, his race, whatever you want to call it, his species, his combination, his hybrid, whatever it was. Who knows what he is or what we are. But anyway, to get to the main point, he was proud of that fact that it was Genghis Khan who did that. 12 million beheaded, non-stop. Talk about a manic rage. Talk about off the charts. I never bothered to look that up, by the way. I just accepted it. He was the history major. You might want to look that up. I think it was like 700 AD or something. I don't remember exactly, but I don't even know when Genghis Khan was. Oh, there's so much to world history that I'd love to be able to read again and renew my knowledge base, but then again, I have to rely upon somebody else to have investigated and to have done the work. And I'm at a point where I'm very, well, it's hard for me to put a lot of credibility into a lot of these stories, a lot of the history. But let's talk again about the end of this earth age, because we have in the Bible some things coded symbolically. And there is a great ocean going beast, a great fish or serpent in the waters. And it's described rather well. And one day the idea crossed my mind, and I shuddered at the thought. But I realized that because of the inputs that I had had, that this was a reasonable synthesis of the thought. Around the band of the equator, there isn't any sea level. You see, what is considered mean sea level is if you flatten the waters out all the way around. But the waters are piled up at the equator. So they are approximately 500 feet in places. I'm sure there's places where it's only 300 feet above mean sea level. So basically what it comes down to is there's a band of water at the equator, like an inner tube, like a tire around the body of the earth. And that's held in place by the forces that are constantly in motion. Right now, the Earth's speeding up a little bit, incrementally. At the rebirth of the Earth, it's my belief that the Earth shifts. It may absolutely stand still. It could go off kilter in another direction. It could start rotating in a different way. And of course, anything that interrupts this body in motion is going to throw the fluids off and around. So if the earth hiccups in its rotation, those waters seek to find the mean. So if you were to suddenly stop the earth in its tracks, the water would keep rotating. It would wash over the surface. Might that not be the beast in the book of Job that's described? The Leviathan and the Behemoth? Might we not be told in the Bible symbolically about this creature, this beast, that when it awakens at the end and beginning of each earth age and overflows across the earth? Might it not be telling us that? It's like when it talks about Satan falling from heaven like lightning on high to the earth. Might that be telling us that the pit isn't under our feet, but in the center of that sun of ours, and that it blows periodically? And remember that God's time is not your time. It's not our time. It's not our time. A day for God is a completely different level than a day for us. Completely different length of time. Scales that we can't imagine. Some of those things are undoubtedly very fast and very quick, very instantaneous. Others of those are very, 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 very slow. So, make that the day of the Lord be 12,068 years. We used to think the day of the Lord corresponds to 100 years. No, no. It corresponds to 1,000 years, a millennia. There are many cycles on the planet, all put into play, all designed at the beginning of creation, put into play at the beginnings, so that he who designed it knows what's coming. He knows these things. He has set things up to arrive right at their time. The crowning of King David, that was at a particular, peculiar time. Across a period of 3 years, there had been 6 consecutive lunar and solar eclipses, each on the high holy days, or day for that year, of ancient Israel. And we know that in the near future, there's going to be a sequence of 7 lunar and solar eclipses, each of which occurs on the high holy days of ancient Israel, over a 3.5-year period. I don't remember the year. I didn't study it. It was delivered to us word of mouth by the fellow who invented it. He'd like to be considered the inventor of it. He discovered it. He did some research. Pompous pride. Decided he wanted to dominate his brothers and sisters in the faith. What kind of love is that? You and I don't know what we're facing. We don't know what's coming. We know that the people that have access to the old records from previous civilizations more advanced than ours, from human beings that were more developed than we are. I think that our founding fathers were more developed than we are today. You don't believe me? Then go read their original writings and marvel at how explicit they convey things. I can't write at that level, and I have a doctorate. I've actually got an English degree underneath that thing. I can't write at the level they wrote. They were smarter. They were better than we are today. You go into the apocryphal books, 1 Esdras, 2 Esdras. The angel tells Ezra, or Esdras, the Latinized name of Ezra, the prophet, that the earth's children are weaker towards the end of an earth age. And the earth's children at the beginning of an earth age, her children are very strong. Well, can you imagine how strong you're going to have to be to make it through the catastrophes and through all the problems that are coming our way? And by the way, those days, those events are laid out in the Bible. So this bunch of jackasses that insist their people wrote the Bible, and they faked a lot of it. Wow. It's not holding much water with me. The proof is in the pudding, and the pudding has already shown us that these things have happened. Like the day that the sun stood still, the day was lengthened, and Joshua was in battle, and he needed the sun to be able to fight long enough that day to prevail, to have victory, and Yahweh gave it to him. Yahweh held the earth still, the sun still. Did you realize that's real? That wasn't a myth. It corresponds to the earth cycles and the clock that goes on and the adjustments that occur. Don't ask me which one it was. Go do your own work for a change. Matter of fact, do it. Report back to me. I want to know. That's something worth studying about. And same with the flood at the Reed Sea or the Red Sea. That corresponds to something that happened major in the earth cycles. These things that are written in the Bible that sound unrealistic to us, that just tall tales, fairy tales, they have more basis in truth than what you realize. a physical truth. If you're just starting to read the Bible, read it for its history. Learn the names of the characters. Learn the plot. And if you really want to know something and learn something, study character development or character deterioration in some cases. Look at the poor choices some of those folks made and the impacts it had. Look at the big mistake that David made, King David made, and look at how it played out in his family afterwards. You're not getting away with a thing. I'm not getting away with anything either. The whole thing is set up. It looks as though it's all haphazard. It appears to be, it's so highly organized that it looks to be just coincidence. But is that the case? When I studied music theory, when we got to the advanced level of theory, we found out that the most highly organized music appeared the most random. And yet it had a higher degree of organization. Now, it had to be explained to me. I couldn't figure it out on my own. It had to be taught to me. But it never ceased to amaze me the level of organization it took to create some of these things. A study for 52 strings, I believe, was its original name, and somebody decided we need to give it a new name. Let's call it the Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima. Horrible title, right? To remind humanity of what we did. Oh, and by the way, did you know what Ground Zero was in Hiroshima? Did you know what they targeted when they bombed that place? They targeted the Christian church that was in the middle of the town, the city. Yeah, they put that nuke right over the Christian church. Talk about symbolic. And in case you're wondering, that is hellfire and brimstone. No, I mean it quite literally. Hellfire and brimstone is what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. And it really happened. We discovered the ancient tell, the city, the ruins of Sodom. It was the biggest mountain in the area, if you will. It was a big hill. Civilization upon civilization had built up. It was massive. How could we miss it? And it's not in the Dead Sea. It's not south of the Dead Sea. It's north of the Dead Sea. And about 20 years ago, we excavated it. Some archaeologists went in there and they dug down. And then when they got to the destructive level, all the bodies were oriented away from the blast center. It was so horrible. It was so terrible that the entire crew was speechless for approximately 6 weeks while they excavated and documented it forensically. Every damaged joint, every injury was done in detail. And you'll say, well, that still doesn't mean it was a nuke. They didn't know anything about nukes back then. That's something we invented. Nobody did that back then. They discovered a crystal down there. I guess from the pictures I saw, it looked like it was a big crystal. I wasn't given measurements, and there was nothing to scale in the picture. It wasn't like they had a quarter next to it to show how big this crystal was. And this giant crystal, I think it was a big one, they hauled that to Sandia Labs in New Mexico. And they asked the people at Sandia Labs, the scientists, can you identify this? What is this? The people at Sandia Labs took one look at it and they identified it all right. And they demanded to know, where did you get this? Turns out that was a particular type of quartz, particular type of crystal, a structure which only forms at nuclear blast sites. Now, if that doesn't scare you enough, let's go to the reality that's in the Bible, what was prophesied Rex Tibosaurus did some videos on this. He did a recent video about 3 months ago on it, summarizing all 3 videos he had made more than 10 years ago and put up. Tibosaurus Rex, the guy who does the Sniper 101 series. I didn't realize he was such a Bible reader, Bible scholar. He did a word study, a breakdown of what the prophet had written about. And he went deep into the meanings of the words. And you know that part in the Bible where there's a lead lid and there's a basket and there's 2 women in it and it said that this is evil? It turns out that the 2 women, what was interpreted as 2 women, could really be interpreted another way: sacrificial fire. And then the fellow looked at the descriptors that were used to describe what he saw in the air. It turns out that the language used was describing missiles. It turns out the dimensions of those missiles and the description of them matches what we have today. And so Rex asked the question, was nuclear war described in the Bible 2,000 years ago? No, Rex, it wasn't. You're mistaken. It was 3,000 years ago. Yes, it's in the Bible. You did such an amazing study. I'm not going to improve upon that. I would like to know how many years it took you to get to that, just to know how much you invested into it. I think we all need to know how much time you spent on that, because you gave us an incredible gift and insight. Yes, it says clearly in the Bible, as Sodom and Gomorrah and their neighbors, it's going to destroy us. Now, is that etched in stone? Is it avoidable? I don't know. I think we're going to live and maybe even die to find out. I mean, if those nukes get exchanged intercontinentally, if they're flying up overhead, you might as well go outside and enjoy the light show, because the survivors are going to have a real rough time. Yet I know there's going to be survivors on that. Do we have enough time for that to happen, and for this end of the world scenario in which the earth gets blasted by the sun? The angel of the pit, Apollyon. Apollyon. That's the Greek name. It says that in the book of Revelations. The Hebrew name, or Aramaic name, is Abaddon. Apollyon sounds like Apollo, the sun god. If you go to the New World Order headquarters in Astana, you will see a brand new city. I mean, it's magnificent. And you Americans, so full of yourself, my fellow Americans, our cities are crumbling. They're decaying. They're death traps at this point. We have bridges that I'm amazed haven't come down. I don't like driving across those bridges on the Mississippi River because I know they aren't maintained. I know a lot of them are ready to go. Some of them have already gone in the past. We aren't the latest and the greatest and the best. They got the best architecture and the most modern city in Astana. Would I like to visit the place? Well, I don't really want to travel right now, but that would be one place that I would want to see. The architecture is satanic in nature, so maybe it's best to be avoided. Maybe I should just enjoy the videos and the pictures of the architecture and the buildings. There was a young native man, I call him young, he's half my age, so he's a mature adult in his middle age. And he produced a video showing what they have there. And the amazing thing is that in the big center, there's a round table, giant round table with slices of the pie, of the pizza, if you will. And at the end of each one of those is a seat. And it's labeled with one of the major religions of the world. And they're all united at this big round table. The round table of Middle Ages, that folklore, is nothing compared to this round table. Every one of those religions has a seat at the table, and I didn't realize there were that many religions in the world. It was massive. And they were united under a dome. Up in the dome was a giant sun and its rays. The sun god, Apollo. The angel that controls the pit. The angel that wreaks down havoc upon the planet every 12,068 years, like clockwork. See, the earth is set up to recycle itself, purify itself, rejuvenate itself. Maybe not so much rejuvenate. Maybe the creators come at the end of an earth age and set up life again on the earth, repopulate it with new species. You need to get flexible in your thinking. I'm not saying you accept anything. Test everything, especially the spirits. Question it. But you need to get flexible in your thinking so you can understand these things and prepare for them. You do not have much time to prepare. You have 23 years, and in that time a lot of stuff is going to be going on. The earth is going to be having more volcanic eruptions. There are going to be more earthquakes as the earth adjusts and gets ready for the big event. The layers of the earth will disengage at some point. It'll be like a lubricant between the mantle, or upper mantle and lower mantle most likely. And the earth is going to be shifting. The forces are going to be really huge. The magnetic field are shields that protect us and allow us to keep an atmosphere in this planet are going to be tested. They're going to be collapsed on the sun's facing side, and on the other side they're going to be trailing off into the distant space. The magnetosphere is going to be pushed to extremes. What happens if you lose your magnetosphere? Look at the planet Mars. They lost their atmosphere. There's cities on that place. What's left of cities? Who knows how long ago? Might these fallen angels that have arrived here and taken over our planet, approximately 70,000 years ago, if you want a date on that, I don't know for sure. I read broadly and widely. That's the best that's available to me. For some reason, I come up with 72,000 years. Actually, when I looked at it on my own, I came up with 50,000 years. And I mentioned it to a teacher in passing. And he said, no, 70,000 years ago. James Wickstrom said it was about 70,000 years ago. Okay. How many Earth ages ago would that be? 5 Earth ages ago? 6 Earth ages ago? 7 Earth ages ago? You don't believe me that there are Earth ages? Then go look at the layers in the Grand Canyon. In some of those layers, you have a mollusk, a species, and they're all aligned in that entire layer. Pink limestone, the mollusks are all oriented in one direction. They all died oriented in a particular, peculiar direction. What does that tell you? It tells me that the Grand Canyon did not form over millions of years from a little tiny erosive Colorado River. It tells me that it was created in a giant flood and massive havoc that was really quick. Had to be within 5 minutes that layer was formed and solidified to get all of those little mollusks oriented in that direction. It's not random order. It's It's a specific order, which means that it occurred probably in an hour or two. And so, how did your Grand Canyon form? It was a result of a great lake up on the ice up above. This massive lake just got larger. And finally, the bottom gave way, and the water went spinning down the hole in this lake like a giant vortex, like a giant toilet flushing, going in one direction. All of that powerful energy. And the people that come up with this idea speculate that the bottom of the lake plugged up again. It filled up again. And it probably flushed 5 or 6 times. And that's how you got that Grand Canyon. And there was a place in there, and I wanted to go there so badly when I was a little boy. I read about that in Boy Scout magazine, and I wanted so badly to float the Grand Canyon. And back then we had freedom. We were allowed free reign, and we could wander into certain canyons that we can't go into today. And one of those was called the Egyptian Canyon. Why? Because they had magnificent ruins, magnificent ancient Egyptian architecture built there in the middle of the United States of America. That civilization was much bigger than what you think, and they had far better technology. All that's been kept from you, kept from me. I'd love to go up in that canyon and see that for myself. Oh, how I wished. There I was in Germany reading Boy Scouts. This little boy, the Boy Scout magazine. And of course, I was a Cub Scout. So the big boys got to do that stuff. Man, I wanted to go float that river with them. That was before Kennedy was assassinated, before America was taken down completely from within. And in case you want evidence of that, go look at Carroll Quigley's book. Carroll Quigley was Bill Clinton's mentor. Carroll Quigley wrote a 2-volume book called Hope and Tragedy, or was it Tragedy and Hope? Tragedy and Hope, I believe, is what the order of those words. Published in 1964 by Macmillan. However, Macmillan wanted him to reduce it to merely 1 volume, that they felt they could sell that. They printed up 2,000 copies of the original. I almost bought one. Oh, when was that? About 15, not quite 15 years ago. It was $400. There was another copy, hardback, for sale for $225. I bought it. It was a reprint. I didn't know there were reprints back then. It was presented and sold to me as an original. It was not. Wish I'd have paid the higher coin and gotten the original. I have since bought another reprint hardback copy, and that one I got for $19.95. There's no sales tax in Alaska for the most part. None in Anchorage. If you really own your labor, if you really own your earnings, if you really have any ownership, then how is it somebody else should dictate to you what's going to happen with your money and insist on getting a cut of your money for nothing? For undermining you, your health, your wealth, and your society, for imprisoning you, for robbing you of your heritage, of your inheritance. Why should we pay the Smithsonian? Why should we fund the Smithsonian when every giant skeleton that's been submitted to the Smithsonian has disappeared, has been destroyed? You don't believe me? Read Carroll Quigley's book. He had access to the New World Order people. You call them New World Order, I got news for you. It's not new at all. These are the old fallen angels, the old devils from 70,000 years ago, repackaged and marketed for your consumption. Sold to you a fraudulent, false bill of goods. And they are devils. If you don't believe me, ask the Chinese. What does their word for Caucasian mean when you break it down? White devils. Yeah, the original fallen angels plagued that people. They wrote that the black woolly-haired ones, they never saw those until after the arrival of the white devils. Who were the white devils? Well, they were big humans. They later created a religion on those called the Dragon Religion. And if you still don't believe me that they took us all over, they published their version of the Bible in 1965 very freely and openly. Oh, and by the way, in Carol Quigley's book, in the paperback versions, they removed the names of some of the people, the prominent people, and some of the institutions because they didn't want the publicity. They didn't want to be revealed. So you got to go to the hardback to get the original names and stuff. Martin Seligman, his family's name is in there. It's off by one letter, but the Seligman family was instrumental in the destruction of America. He's still alive today, trying to repackage and resell himself and go down as the father of positive psychology. He is the father of learned helplessness and other research that was taken underground because it wouldn't pass the public muster. It wouldn't pass the smell test. It wasn't ethical to do that research. I'm convinced that he did that research for our government, and they're using the results of those experiments on us. Go look at your 1965 edition of the Schofield Reference Study Bible, and there you will see different headings than what exists today in it and than what originally was in that Bible. And you will see headings that basically bleed through their intentions and purposes, like throwing Christendom against the Muslims so that the two of them would decimate each other. That bleeds through in the headings of certain chapters of that Bible. The evidence is there, folks. You just have to look for it. We're way over time. This is Giving Psychology Away. It should be number 151. I don't title these things anything else. It seems like I get better viewership when I just give it the generic title. And do subscribe to my channel. Do keep up with my shows. And if you want, and I won't blame you for this one iota, one bit, speed it up a little bit. Don't waste too much of your time. If, on the other hand, you want to hear the nuances of my voice and you want the full effect and you want to actually access my subconscious mind and what I'm trying to program you up with, how I'm trying to influence you, then go at normal speed. Don't slow it down. That's kind of creepy. If you speed it up, at least you're getting the information a bit faster. Do 1.25%. That won't throw the pitch, the pace, and the little nuances off by much. Sometime I think I should call this group therapy with Dr. Kent, because I am trying to influence you. I am trying to change you. I am trying to make you aware that Creator Father's name, which was I am that I am, was Yahweh. And by the way, the motto of the Sikhs, the youngest faith on the face of the earth, that was synthesized in the about the 17th century, it was Satnam. Existence is truth. It's not that far off from I am. But Yahweh gave us his name, and we lost it because the evil ones suppressed it in our Bibles, approximately 275 BC. So if you really want to get used to Yahweh and Yahshua's proper names, the easiest way is to read this Bible. Follow the link down below. Hit that tab. Go to the page. Hit that tab that opens up, that menu, drop-down menu. There'll be 5 different formats you can choose from. As near as I can tell, the price hasn't gone up. I was told the price would be going up. I was told that a couple of years ago. But we want to get these Bibles out there. Get a copy and start reading it. Educate yourself. You are responsible for your own education. make America good again. May Yahweh restore our republic.